out of the White House's plan to put Washington front and center in the AI race, comparing what they want to do to the Manhattan Project. You know, the research project that gave us the atomic bomb. It's called the Genesis mission, a government-wide push to fast-track AI breakthroughs in energy, science, and defense with the Department of Energy at the center of it all. The plan unites AI research across 17 national labs and some 40,000 DOE scientists, creating one coordinated federal AI platform for the first time ever. Joining us now to break all of this down and help us understand what is going on is NBC News reporter covering AI, Jared Perlow. Jared, thank you so much for joining us. Big picture, when you hear the comparison to the Manhattan Project, a lot of people think, okay, are we in that type of scenario where they feel like this is some sort of next war endeavor or frontier? What do you make of it having a name and kind of the references to the Manhattan Project?
Yeah, so I think this is a tremendous shift in kind of America's approach to AI, or really, I think it's a reinvention of kind of federal backing of AI projects. So we've seen throughout the Biden administration, earlier in the Trump administration, kind of federal efforts to back AI, but this is kind of the first really concerted push, throwing the heft of the federal government behind the development, research, and application of AI. So as a colleague said to me, you know, if it really was the Manhattan Project, we probably wouldn't be talking about it because that remained secret for quite some time. But I think, you know, I don't know if it's similar to the Apollo program to, you know, reach the moon, maybe something like President Biden's cancer moonshot, but I think it is a really substantial, you know, declaration by the Trump administration that we're going to focus on using AI to search for scientific discoveries and basically change the way that scientific research is actually conducted in America.
So what does this mean for Silicon Valley? I mean, should we consider this a formal power shift from there to DC when it comes to the AI space?
So I think this is, as I see it, kind of more of a joining of forces. So if you take a step back, the development of AI as we know it today is kind of interesting and different from many other very high-performing technologies. So if you think about the internet, even kind of the development of microchips, all of that was really subsidized or kind of spearheaded by the government. So AI, on the other hand, has really been spearheaded, developed by a handful of private sector labs. You think Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, you know, the companies whose chatbots you use. So I think the announcement yesterday is kind of a joining of forces between Silicon Valley and the government. And there's certainly a lot of chummy relationships between people in the White House AI star David Sachs has a very close relationship. A lot of these people were former venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. So I think there's going to be a lot more public-private partnerships, and that's one of the most exciting parts of the order, is it explicitly said that within 90 days, the Secretary of Energy, who's kind of overseeing all this, has to identify some of those opportunities for further public-private collaboration, especially on chips and on, you know, building out AI applications.
So what do you think this means for AI and advancements in AI moving forward? Is there any concern amongst industry insiders that the government being involved could slow down some of the innovation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really see it that way. So kind of the three-legged stool of AI comprises chips or computing power, data, and algorithms. And you basically need all three of those legs in order to fuel the AI fire. And, you know, perhaps people have been reading headlines. They've seen, you know, $1.4 trillion in commitments to chips from companies like OpenAI. But this question about data is kind of one of the biggest concerns. And by basically signaling in the order yesterday that the federal government is going to open its repositories of data, you know, everything from deep sea exploration to health data to economic data, I don't know, even wind data, you know, from organizations like NOAA, you know, basically making the federal government's vast data troves and mines of these previously untapped data resources could really kind of transform how scientists within the government and then, you know, in private sector collaborators really kind of approach AI, and maybe it will, you know, turbocharge the speed of AI development.
How soon do we expect to see all of this actually happening and play out?
Yeah, so it being kind of more of a landscape sort of executive order, the first actions, I think, are within 30 days, but within 270 days, the order asks the Department of Energy and people within the White House to figure out how AI can actually be applied to critical national challenges like robotics, like biotechnology, and, you know, even nuclear fission. So I'd say probably within a year's time, we'll see, hopefully, some movement on this.
Fascinating stuff. NBC's Jared Perlow, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Scott with SJWellfire.com. Final Days Report, episode 467. Are we seeing finally the beginnings of one AI to rule the world? Trump's AI executive order called Genesis. Folks, they're mocking you. They're playing you. They're playing God. We're going to cover multiple topics that they're going after. Some reporting said healthcare, some didn't. I think they're going to push for it to solve disease, energy, the security problems. This is deep state 1984 DNA defilement, biomedical biohacking of you. We'll prove it out. This is everything we've been warning about. And the first proof point of how government wants to control a handful of artificial intelligence. And oh, by the way, they want to spread this technology around the world. Remember the podcast we did with Trump's bogus tariff increase that had nothing to do with rate to rate. It was rate increase by the USA Inc. because of the deficit. So percents versus real dollar deficit had nothing to do with percent to percent. But we started to negotiate to countries, hey, we'll lower your tariff rate if you implement the Beast AI system. Starlink, Stargate, and then all of a sudden we saw Trump's administration launching this artificial intelligence around the world, the UK, the Middle East. This is the building of the Beast system. And now this appears to be the fourth or fifth leg that we're seeing, right? Remember the second day of Trump's administration, the announcement of AI Stargate? And now we have Genesis, mocking of the word of God, the counterfeit, the Tower of Babel that we've always said, according to Chabad Lupovich. But I want to play this venture capitalist talking about how under Biden, basically they said we're going to control 4 big players. I think that's still the case because you need to think about this right-left theater as they're using AI with this Genesis project to solve electricity issues. Folks, Trump's uncle has Tesla's inventions, the free energy inventions. I think there are between 3,000 and 5,000 suppressed patents that have a ton of free energy patents. I've played some of the videos. I think it was Prophecy Club did an interview or discussed a story of someone that had an invention that increased efficiency of a said item by 70%, basically almost a free energy device, not quite, 70% efficient, would have been a game changer. Stan Meyer running cars on water, taken out, offered $1 billion by Saudi Arabia. I mean, folks, I'm not buying any of this as we get into the details on how this is a counterfeit. This is a mocking of God. This is DNA defilement with bioengineering. This is why God has to burn everything down in the end. But let's set this up first. This reminds me of that private-public infrastructure that will be built where AI will rule the world. From a government standpoint, maybe the 10 kings are tech companies, as I've always mentioned. I mentioned that years ago. But let's roll this. I don't think anything changes under Trump and Biden. Here we go.
Meetings in DC in May where we talked to them about this, and the meetings were absolutely horrifying, and we came out basically deciding we had to endorse Trump.
What did you hear in those meetings?
AI is a technology basically that the government is going to completely control. This is not going to be a startup thing. They actually said flat out to us, don't do AI startups. Like don't fund AI startups. It's not something that we're going to allow to happen. They're not going to be allowed to exist. There's no point. They basically said AI is going to be a game of 2 or 3 big companies working closely with the government, and we're going to basically wrap them in a, I'm paraphrasing, but we're going to basically wrap them in a government cocoon. We're going to protect them from competition. We're going to control them, and we're going to dictate what they do. And then I said, I don't understand how you're going to lock this down so much, because like the math for, AI is like out there and it's being taught everywhere. And, they literally said, during the Cold War, we classified entire areas of physics and took them out of the research community, and like entire branches of physics basically went dark and didn't proceed. And that if we decide we need to, we're going to do the same thing to the math underneath AI.
Wow.
And I said, I've just learned 2 very important things. Because I wasn't aware of the former, and I wasn't aware that you were, even conceiving of doing it to the latter.
Now, do you think making physics go dark changed if a president on the right was in office or a president on the left? No, because it's an agenda. And that's the same thing that's happening here. This reminds me of the ballroom construction that just didn't make any sense. Is that going to be where the hub of this AI beast system is? But let's get into it. This is creepy. From NBC, Trump signs executive order launching Genesis Mission AI project. The White House plans to launch a new federal initiative to advance the nation's artificial intelligence research, development, and scientific application. All of this goes to DOGE, scanning all of the government processes and expenditures. This DOGE, spelled backwards, is EGOD. And you have to check out Final Days Report, episode 463, OmniMind with Oracle, where AI can reason against private and public data. And according to Larry Ellison, most of the world's high-value private data, because Oracle is a cloud service, sits on an Oracle database. And they today are reasoning against that private data for their artificial intelligence. Check that out. Final Days Report, episode 463. And this also reminds me, of the healthcare initiative that Trump launched, where they said, we're going to open up your healthcare information to all these big tech companies. Remember how Larry Ellison said, oh, you have cancer? We will give you a personalized mRNA cancer shot to treat it. So they give you cancer with SV40. They give you cancer that skyrocketed after As the Days of Noah devil juice. Just about every major disease has skyrocketed, and now they're going to solve it with the same technology. I mean, it's time to wake up. But let's read, because we're going to go deep and just talk about how this is the final beast system. This Genesis product solicits private sector and university partners to use their AI capability. There's your Oracle. Without the CIA, Oracle would not exist. It solicits private sector and university partners to use their AI capability to help the government solve engineering, energy. I'm not buying energy for a second because they have free energy, and national security problems. That is key. That is Palantir. That is monitoring the net. That is ID 2020 that we'll dive into. And national security problems, including streamlining the nation's electric grid, according to the White House officials. Now, there's some people that are saying medical advancements as well. But one of the things that is totally in this is bioengineering. That is key. As the Days of Noah, DNA defilement. And again, this whole notion of energy security, all the suppressed patents, Stan Meyer running the car on water, that was something that when I first woke up in 2008 and the internet was not censored, I researched free energy devices, and the amount of innovations are mind-bending that are suppressed, people taken out. I think it was 20-some% of the world's GDP was wrapped up in oil when Stan Meyer was taken out. So if you're involved in thinking global warming is real, they can run cars on water. No, they want to get rid of cows. They want to control you. They want you exhale carbon dioxide. They want to tax you with a carbon dioxide tax. It's a joke. On Noah's own website, 9 ways to control the weather. People called it out. They took it off. In the name Genesis, this is a counterfeit of the word of God. This is the new Tower of Babel, Genesis 11:6. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they all have one language, and this they began to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. That's interesting. That's probably the one verse in the Bible where it shows Lucifer has a ton of power to a point, and then God will shut it down. That's when he scrambled people's language. I always thought about that verse. I was like, and nothing with this Tower of Babel will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Well, what does Lucifer want to do? He wants to overthrow God and take his place. What do you think in the comments? But let's go a little bit deeper with Genesis. And I'm going back to, it solicits private sector and university partner to use their AI capability to help the government solve engineering, energy, and national security problems. Well, Trump administration expands facial recognition while erasing oversight policy. Biometricupdate.com. This is a poll in every city. I had that dream of a poll, a surveillance poll that can listen, see, surveil in a small town of 12,000 people. It was nuts. And you need to think about this private partnership. Think Palantir that blurs the lines of military operations and civilian censorship. It's a new surveillance state. I was thinking about this. It's a whole new blackmail operation. Do they really need their honey traps with kids? If they're allowed to censor you 24/7, and they already probably are. Wild time to be alive, my friends. And this reminds me of how once you can see the strategy and you see the plan, and then you look at their tactics of probably false flags, maybe some of these incidents are real or they're Manchurian candidates, they're mind control victims to go do said task. But once you see the narrative and how the news spins it, and the news is allowed to lie to you with the reversal of the Smith-Mundt Act in 6 companies, 90% of all media. So it's controlled. Media is controlled. Once you see it, you can't unsee it because it reminds me of the story. It reminds me of the story of the Afghanistan that basically shot 2 National Guardsmen. Because I'm going to play a video. It's all over using new technology for identifying who you are and license plate readers to scan. And they mentioned the false flags that happened with the Tesla blowing up at the Trump Tower, screamed like a false flag. Things didn't add up. It's a narrative for biometric identification. Remember, Trump said his first administration, we're going to have this biometric tracking identification system on land and sea and all throughout the United. That is going to be used on you. That is ID 2020. That has to fit their central bank digital currencies or their smart coins, their stable coins, I should say. That is central bank digital currency light. A pump and dump, know exactly what you spend your money on. This is bad script writing to fit an agenda. You can see this. So let's play this video.
Breaking news just coming into us in the last maybe 90 seconds or so. A suspect has now apparently been identified in that shooting of 2 National Guard troops in D.C. I want to bring in our national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent, Tom Winter. All right, Tom, bring us up to speed.
Yeah, Hallie, 4 senior U.S. law enforcement officials briefed on the investigation say they've identified the man they believe is responsible for shooting of those 2 National Guardsmen who are now in critical condition. They've identified the individual as Rob Manula Lockenwall. Date of birth is February 9th, 1996. Last known address is in Bellingham, Washington. This individual was identified through, he did not have an ID on him. We have a photo of him being put into a stretcher, had been stripped of his clothing or had very limited clothing, apparently at the time of this incident occurring. As he targeted these 2 National Guardsmen, used a handgun to commit it. Apparently, he's an Afghan national. I was still trying to get some details on his immigration history, but they were able to use a kind of a rapid fingerprint type technology that is completely electronic. So take out of your heads kind of the Law and Order version where they put the ink on your fingers and check from there. This is all digital, and we're able to check that against the database and come up with this individual's identification. Having seen a photo that we're still trying to confirm of this person and a photo of this person that was on the stretcher, they do appear to be the same individual. So again, Rob Manula Lockenwall from Bellingham, Washington, an Afghan national born in 1996, is the person that the FBI now believes is responsible for this. And as we've been reporting, and as NBC News was first to report tonight, in fact, the FBI is investigating this initially as a potential act of terrorism. Of course, motives can change in the course of the investigation. They can look into that. But at least initially here, this is going to be led by the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Washington, D.C. And this information is now being shared with law enforcement agencies, we're told, across the country, just given the fact that they want to check up on all these things. Certainly officials here in New York are aware of this information. We're told from officials in D.C. Because they wanted people in the law enforcement agencies here in New York to be aware of who this person was, to see if there's any ties, anybody they need to check. With tomorrow being the 99th Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, right now there is not believed to be any sort of specific or credible threat to that, according to an NYPD briefing.
Tom, can I ask you something? And I don't want us to get over our skis here on this, but you point out that the last known location of the suspect was in Washington State, obviously across the country from Washington, D.C. Is there any reason to believe, on the basis of the sources you're talking to, that this individual traveled across the country for the purpose of carrying out this attack? Had they already been, spending time or living in D.C. for a little bit? Do we not know?
That's probably the number one question that they're trying to figure out at this time. Check back on travel schedules, figure out how this person got there. They do have information as far as their driver's license and vehicle. They'll check that. There's obviously license plate readers. We've seen that come into such use by law enforcement over the past several years. And just this year, you look at New Year's Day, that information was so helpful in trying to determine the location and how the individual that attacked New Orleans on New Year's Day. And also, remember the incident at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. That individual who had an incendiary device that arrived at the hotel there. They were able to trace that person's travels through the license plate reader and get an identification. So all of that, Hallie, will go into the investigation. But you've asked the question that law enforcement is desperately trying to figure out at this hour.
Now, this story reminds me of a couple things. We covered the story on how Biden brought in a ton of Afghanistan unvetted people. And I was like, is this an army to destroy the United States, Inc.? Not from the left, just from the deep state, because USA Inc. is bankrupt. The bankers need to get paid. And 25% of the income tax goes to the interest on the bogus debt from the Federal Reserve Bank. It's all a scam. It's a house of cards. It's a Ponzi scheme. And so did they bring in these Afghan military-age men without vetting them. And then it also reminded me of how when we were in Afghanistan protecting the poppy fields, right? The world runs on drugs and USA Inc. runs the drugs. How they use this scan technology to scan people and to scan their eyes. It reminded me of this biometric identification system that they're trying to build. Was that a test run for it? I'll see if I can find an old article of them scanning the Afghanistan people. Now, you need to think about this. This digital ID is a huge part of this. TSA may charge passengers without real ID or passport. What we know. By hook or by crook, they need to digitize everything. Christians deemed terrorists in studies funded by the Department of Homeland Security. Now, granted, this was a long time ago under Obama, but folks, it doesn't swing depending upon who the leaders are. Homeland Security terrorist watch list, constitutionalists, if you're against abortion, Christians, conspiracy people, those against CV-19, that was recent. Just about everybody I know, even liberals at one time, fell into this trap. I mean, if you have a pulse, if you're not an NPC, if you have critical thinking skills, if you're a Christian, if you believe in free speech, if you think sin is sin and don't accept perversion, you're a terrorist. If you want your own property without being taxed to death. A recent event that happened with Department of Homeland Security where X has a new feature that says where the account started and where is it being run out of. Well, people did screenshots, videos of Department of Homeland Security started in Israel and being run out of Israel. And so Department of Homeland Security is labeling everyone a terrorist over the years. And it's being run out of Israel. Now, if you follow our ministry, basically we do Bible studies that says Israel, Jerusalem, is the woman of the book of Revelation that rules the kings of the earth. Just another proof point. You need to think about Noahide laws. So I tried to find a video, and I'm going to play a politically incorrect comedian who claims to be a Christian. Folks, we need to pray everybody gets saved. But at the end of the day, I think she did a very, very nice job describing what happened and how we're being gaslit. It's deep. And going back to this AI public-private relationship, this final beast system called Genesis Mission, security is a major platform. Security. So when will Palantir know everything you do? It's cover for it, my friends, because they already do. You're going to be on a terrorist watch list. And in the end result, when everything comes into place, prophecy gets fulfilled, Noahide laws is going to behead believers. The war is on Christians. Pray everybody gets saved, my friends. Well, let's play this video, and then we'll get into the defilement, the biohacking of you. And why is the Department of Energy involved in the Genome Project? Little teaser after this video.
First things first, X turned on a feature where you could click on a profile and see where the account was opened, what country it was opened in, and what country it's currently operating out of. And people, of course, went ahead and looked up the Department of Homeland Security. And this is what they found. Oh no, would you look at that? It says it was started in Israel in 2009 and that it's operating out of Israel. And what does it say? Opened in July 2008, out of Israel, operating out of Israel. And immediately there we go. July 2008 out of Israel, based in Israel, connected via the Israel Android app. So I guess the Israelis don't trust Apple. They're going to use Androids. Okay. So this happened. And then the feature where you could go look up the location was immediately disabled. I wonder Why? Okay, it was disabled. You weren't able to do that. I mean, you can do it now. It's been re-abled. And we're being told it's manipulated media. Nikita Beer says this is fake news. The location was not available on any gray check account at any point. Furthermore, the DHS has only shown IPs from the United States since account creation. Now, did he post any evidence that this was true? No. We don't have any of the back-end evidence showing that the IPs have only shown that the United States was the IP for the DHS. So we just have to take his word for it. Now, Lauren Witzka, I'm sorry, I know I'm not pronouncing your name right, Lauren. I apologize. She posted a video where at the same time, this program is running that would show and indicate if there has been any photoshopping going on with that video. And as you can see, nothing is coming up. That means that this video is unadulterated. This is literally a screenshot from somebody using their phone showing that this is the information that they got when they opened the profile of the DHS, that it was created in Israel and it was operating out of Israel. I should point out to everyone that the Department of Homeland Security was created in November 2002 in response to 9/11. And that our man over here, Michael Chertoff, was the second United States Attorney General serving of the Department of Homeland Security. And he is the one who released the Israeli art students and the dancing ones to go back to Israel without clearing them of any involvement. Just saying! We had our guy, our Michael Chertoff guy, who's responsible, especially when we have our guy, Michael Chertoff here. Michael Chertoff, who's responsible for the body scanners you got to go through when you want to get on an airplane. You know, the body scanners that may or may not be giving you cancer. I'm on YouTube, so I can't say. But you're being exposed to x-rays every time you want to go through, unless for a tiny little fee you can pay to do TSA pre-check, which somehow makes you not a terrorist. Because if I was a terrorist, yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to spend an extra $100 to not get screened. That makes so much sense. Yeah, as Woe says here, the inadvertent leak was so unbelievably damaging that X scrambled all weekend, making up new lies about what happened, and even deployed a new feature to gaslight us. Interesting. What was very weird. What's going on there, right? I mean, you know, we're being lied to. They're always lying to us. They're always telling us, no, it's nothing to worry about. Don't concern yourself. Let's move.
But Genesis gets more strange, this AI Genesis executive order. AI Genesis project directs the Department of Energy to build an integrated national AI platform that connects supercomputers, vast federal scientific data sets, AI agents, and experimental labs. Microelectronics nanotech is part of Genesis. And never forget, one of the creepiest podcasts I've ever done is the Department of Energy funds the Genome Project that was linked to the Eugenics Institution. You can't make this up. It's an unsettling alliance. Even the Department of Energy funding the Genome Project. And all of this reminds me of how the human body can help power 6G devices in the future, study shows. The Department of Energy is involved in your Genome Project because of the mark of the beast system on how they want to defile God's creation. It's a seed war. They want to take you out, not allow you to reproduce, turn you into a slave, their pet, your servant, for their disturbing habits. This is crazy. It's a head scratcher, even for the smartest people that aren't conspiracy people. Why is the Department of Energy funding the Genome Project and having it being linked to the Eugenics Institution? Why? Are they going to use humans to fuel their 6G? To fuel their enslavement system with their little microelectronics? Or just how do they leverage the humans to feed their nanotech in you? And it gets more wicked, and it kind of corresponds to the last slide. They want to destroy life, this bio-digital convergence, the Internet of Things, Internet of Bodies, artificial intelligence, hooking up to that with read-write capability. Advancing biotechnology and biomanufacturing innovation for a sustainable, safe, and secure American bioeconomy. This was Biden's executive order, and it smells a lot like this one. Genesis AI aims to coordinate a whole of government approach to advance biotechnology and biomanufacturing towards innovative solutions in health, climate change, energy, food security, agriculture, supply chain resilience, and national and economic security. National and economic security reminds me of the mark of the beast system. It reminds me of central bank digital currencies, of stable coins, which is central bank digital currencies light. It reminds me of the carbon dioxide tracker that all sides want. It reminds me of ID 2020, where you can't do anything without your digital papers, please. Can't go buy food, can't travel. Climate change, give me a break. Healthcare, give me a break. mRNA technology that will change your DNA. Personalized DNA defilement medicine for you. And energy, that is such a lie because they have free energy. They suppress patents. So AI, as I've talked about from a dream I had, is going to become the hero. And when I actually had that dream, there were many warnings about AI. Oh, don't go to AI. And there still are some, but that was the majority of the message. That was around the time where Elon Musk said we're summoning a demon that we can't control. Now it's going to be a hero. So bio nanotechnology and bioeconomy. See, there's this nanotechnology to biomanufacturing and biotechnology. These are the little robots. And they're going to defile not only you, this DNA seed world, it's going to be all of God's creation. This is from the Ice Age Farmer, a post he had on Telegram. Bill Gates' new $1.4 billion soil bioengineering initiative, sold under the guise of philanthropic climate adaptation, is an effort to hijack the biosphere itself, soil mapping, engineering, microbes, and genetic interventions under the banner of sustainability. John Fleetwood nails it. His reporting aligns with what I've been saying. These aren't isolated ag tech projects. They're nodes in the larger planetary biosurveillance grid, a system designed to monitor, record, and ultimately control life at every level, from crops and forest to human microbiomes. Folks, this is your AIB system. The bioeconomy, a node of every blade of grass. I say that often. I heard somebody talk about that with this technocracy government they're trying to build. And this Genesis product, it's a new beginning. This is false light. This is a counterfeit to the word of God. This is the Tower of Babel. And we've been saying this for 4 years. 4 years. Are the 10 kings of the book of Revelation, are they tech companies? The 10 kings of Daniel. And if you don't believe me, it's in the word of God, Revelation 18, 23 and 24, right? Fooling the world with their sorceries. That's pharmakia. This personalized medicine that they're going to be pushing, that Larry Ellison talked about with the Stargate announcement and also some of his previous presentations, this nanotech was in the warp speed that looks like Neuralase, and we know it goes across the blood-brain barrier. This is nothing short of iron mixed with clay, this biodigital convergence. New lipid nanoparticle that was in warp speed platform delivers mRNA to the brain through the blood-brain barrier. Now, this article was talking about solutions to cure disease. And I know I've said this probably the last, 10 podcasts a couple times, but look at what was in the As Days of Noah devil juice. That looks like a little chip. Larry Ellison Stargate, again, they're going to personalize medicine for you. And you don't need, with Elon Musk's Neuralase, you don't need a chip in your head. They have non-invasive surgery. His words. And there are multiple companies left and right building this technology. It's not a right-left thing. It's a brain hack thing. It's a humanity thing. It's so funny. People are so caught up in it's just Trump. No, it doesn't matter what president's in. And the ultimate goal of this biohacking element is to mind control you. Remember the articles we covered? Scientific American, mind control by cell phone. Here's that study we covered with a mouse that they could turn on with optogenetics where the mouse would kill. This is Satan's time. And the Lord said unto the serpent, this is in Genesis, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat in all the days of thy life, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. It's talking about the crucifixion of Christ. Ultimately, Satan's head is going to be bruised. Wild time to be alive, my friends. Now, just if you're sitting back and you're like, no way, the government's going to do this. The government's good. I'm talking to the people that aren't awake. USA Inc. runs the drugs. Clinton Chronicles. This whole going after the cartels is a joke to me. I just watched a very well done video interview from Redacted of how the U.S. government is involved in human trafficking, and we've always known this. But he went on within this interview. 350,000 kids went missing. Unaccompanied kids that came in across the border were property of the USA government. And then their transfer of the kids, it was decompartmentalized within 4 different steps under the Biden administration. But the solution is going to be ID 2020. The solution is going to be this biometric identification system on the blockchain. Order out of chaos. It's a playbook. And then we have Clinton's ASFA Act, where we've covered this before, where the CPS, local CPS, gets money to steal kids. And of 480,000 kids stolen, 54% never go back to their families. These kids are drugged, abused, end up missing. And during this interview, this guy said 83% of the cases where the CPS took the kids, the CPS was wrong, their own study. So why hasn't Trump rescinded this whole racket? Because they're evil on both sides. MAGA is the highest rank of the Church of Satan, and Satanists thrive on defiling kids, the innocent. Then you need to think, so USA Inc. runs the drugs. USA Inc. is trafficking. They're poisoning us, right? They poison us with warp speed, with SV40 and the old school pokes, with the poisoning of the food supply, EMF, 5G, 6G, right? Electromagnetic frequency, whatever they're dumping on us in the trails, fluoride in the water, which actually causes cancer and lowers IQ. What's up with that experimental fog? Remember that? Where people were getting sick and it had the weird smell? Folks, they're here to take out the population. It's a globalist Club of Rome plan. Your government is funding genocide war machine in Gaza, and they're partnering up with Palantir, this targeting system of Gazans, targeting system here in the United States as well. But in Israel, it's called the gospel. You better wake up. You better wake up. We have social media executives sworn in as military leaders without any training. That happened. We covered that story. So all of a sudden, somebody could become a colonel, a lieutenant, a general. They're blending social media. They're blending big corporations with the government. This is the Genesis Project. And of course, they're destroying the Constitution with their false flags, censoring the net, red gun flag laws, the tax on your income, tax, the RICO laws, the National Defense Authorization Act after the false flag of 911, the reversal of the Smith-Mundt Act allowing them to lie. Do you see how this is all a scam? Funding Amazon packages, that's fascism. It's an unfair advantage. And the whole scam, I think, at the core goes back to the private bank, the Federal Reserve Bank that runs USA Inc. And now we have money going digital with stable coins, central bank digital currency light. This is nothing short of a trap. In Trump's administration, TSA may charge passengers without real ID or passport. What we know. Desperate. They're desperate. And again, it just reminds me of the death fog that was happening in Canada, UK, USA, and Germany. It feeds this AI god with potentially smart dust. What are we dealing with here? What are we dealing with here? So, if you haven't seen my last podcast, check it out. It's theater. You're watching theater. So, The Economist, run by the Rothschilds, those private bankers, basically are predicting massive chaos for 2026. And they're telling you it's a script, it's a game to them. Because look at the soccer player kicking the soccer ball that is the world. It's a script run by the global brain hooked up to a video game console. Have no fear, friends. Our job is to save souls. Save souls. Get on the court and be bold. Save souls. Get your house in order. Pray. Get in the Word of God. Fast if you need to. And thank you for your support. Please pray for this ministry. And God bless.